This is such a joke. What the fuck? This is one of the strongest offensive builds in Path of Exile 2, but this particular character is kind of dog shit. I put about 600 to 700 exalts into this Vine Arrow Gemling, and has about 20% of the damage and half of the defense of my endgame setup. Now I was notified of the strength of the skill from my homie Sister Hell, who keeps a pretty good eye on the Korean PoE meta. So unlike other skills, Vine Arrow scales exponentially well with gem levels, netting about 50% more damage per level. So at level 40, it has 761,945.6 base damage. In comparison, Comet, one of the hardest hitting spells in all of PoE 2, only deals 12,301 damage at that same level. The core concept of this build then is just to push gem levels as much as humanly possible. We do this mostly through a Quiver, Widowhill scaling, Quiver effect scaling on the tree and jewels, and a couple of other sources. Let's get to the details of this one. It's really simple and really strong. So I'm going to hover over my gear just one time through so you can see each individual piece, and you can pause as you go. But generally speaking, these pieces aren't super crazy, but specific pieces are quite expensive, like this Quiver and the Amulet. And then in general, I'm looking for a ton of jewels that have this specific mod. Bonuses gained from Equip Quiver. Those are pretty expensive. Even the base roll, if you get like terribly divine one, is about 20 exalts or something at like a min roll, and trying to divine it at 15 is quite hard. But that's sort of the core concept of gearing. Now let's go over to the actual build guide page that I set up, and it's pretty straightforward. Because the build is straightforward. It's not something that's using complex mechanics. It is a very straightforward and linear build that pretty much just uses the numbers that Grinding Gear kind of put in for the skill gem. You know, I think they might have slightly underestimated how easy it'd be to get to 40, but to be honest, it's not easy. My estimated cost for this build towards endgame is probably going to be about 2 mirrors, or about 2,000 exalted orbs currently, so that's quite expensive. Anyways, I've already talked about this intro, and basically these are all the different sources I'm planning to go for. You can kind of change this up. For example, you can get like a slightly worse or slightly better bow and then move one of the jewels away, and then like that's sort of where the variation is. It's also possible, I think, maybe to get a +4 gem level from Amulet if you get a +3 and then Vol it for like 20 or like for +1. I'm not sure if that's possible, but it's possible and unique, so I would imagine. Anyways, this is it. So 21 from the gem, +2 on the Quiver. This gets scaled by 600%, 300 and some odd-ish from a Corrupted Widowhill, so that's like over here, ideally. And then a bunch from jewels and then a bit from the tree. +3 from the Amulet, I already have that. There's one from Chaos Mastery, that's a support gem, and then one from the skill tree, there's a +1 Chaos naturally. And then Gemling gives you +1 on the Ascendancy, and finally Crown of the Victor. Terrible helmet, but does give you +1. So this helmet basically says 50% more damage, and that's really crazy. The more multipliers you can stack, the more power you're gonna have. In terms of stat prio, proj skill level trumps everything. My particular Quiver ends up having both damage with bow skills and proj speed. Now this is really, really good because of two things. Firstly, there isn't a lot of increased damage scaling for this build. Things like generic damage with two-handed weapons does work. Chaos damage does work. Projectile damage will not work. I don't think area damage works. Anything that's hit-based, anything that's attack-based will not work. So there's only a few sources of increased damage that actually work. Thankfully, though, this is getting scaled by like 600%. So I have a 49% roll, which is like, scaled out by 600. I'm getting like 300% increased damage. Oh no, I guess 350% increased damage from my Quiver. So it's like really, really crazy. I guess I'm getting 500% total. Anyways, proj speed is also really great. The way that Vine Arrow plays is kind of like Toxic Rain from Path of Exile 1. So you fire an arrow up in the air and then it lands. Projectile speed reduces the duration or the time from which you fire the arrow and when it lands. So it actually just makes your clear feel a lot better. I happen to hit proj speed on my Quiver. It's, not uncommon. If you, for example, had like a magic thing with plus proj levels and plus damage with bow skills, if you were to use the essence of speed, I think that's possible. It would probably be like a 50-50 chance to hit proj speed, because I think the other mod's attack speed. But yeah. Res is pretty important. I'm still not res capped. I have like 10 chaos res. It's a nightmare right now. The gearing is just so expensive if you want to go for offensive. And then I think the chest is really good to go for a pure evasion. It's more important than any other stat you can possibly get on chest. I would save spirit for amulet probably. The thing about evasion is that one, it scales really well with my tree. My tree is almost entirely increased evasion nodes because there's no damage to take and there's no life to take. But it also gives a lot of value to this tree node down here, Spectral Ward. So the life pool is pretty small because, it's a right side tree and we don't have that many like nodes to access, I guess, for increased life or defense in general. So I'm opting to play for a semi-hybrid, just like a little bit, and eventually I'll be playing Ghost Dance for my ES recovery. Really helpful, you don't get hit very often. In the end game, I'm looking to be at about 75 to 80% evade with acrobatics. And then lastly, yeah, Spirit, you need actually enable Ghost Dance. I don't have this yet, but it is what it is. And that's that. Gearing is simple. The gems are also simple. There's not a whole lot because it's a relatively low button playstyle. I basically only press 2 buttons when I'm mapping. One is Vine Arrow, the other is Blink. Blink is on a 3.6 second cooldown, really great because of Gemling Legionnaire. Gemling has this node over here that makes it so you can use like intelligence gems, even if you only have dexterity. And Blink, I think, gets a little bit of cooldown per level. Also, this quality scales it. So I've also seen some CDR on Tree. So Blink feels unreal, man. This is as close to a PoE1 build as I felt so far, honestly. So Vine Arrow is linked to Chaos Mastery and Swift Affliction. These are the 2 main damage supports. I swap in Hourglass for Scatter Shot on bosses. There aren't any other damage supports, I believe. Martial Tempo and Scatter Shot are both for QOL and Clear. And then, yeah, so then I just swapped this in. This is usually hanging out in my basic attack, and I swap it with Scatter Shot. Rain of Arrows is how I apply Wither. This is a 50% more damage multiplier. Very, very consistent. Conk Effect, Inspiration, Chaos Infusion, and Withering Touch. If I was going to miss one, I'd probably skip Conk. The amount of cost on these skills is really high, because this is also like level 38 or something like that, 37, something absurd, because it's also a bow skill. So this thing ends up costing like 400 mana. Despair is a curse, which also happens to be really expensive. And we also have +2 chaos skills. I play Persistence and Titan Curse here. Basically, the rotation on bosses is I start throwing a couple of Rain of Arrows out. Right before the boss spawns, I press Despair. There's a slight delay. Bam, it pops, and then I press Divine Arrow on top of the boss. And it does like about 2 mil DPS right now, all things calculated. Blink is linked to Ingenuity and Arcane Tempo. There are people that will prefer playing Second Wind for an extra charge. I don't, because I spam this very often while mapping. Wind Dancer is a great defensive aura. It knocks everyone back when you get hit. You don't get hit very often. You can also link it to Blind and Main, which is like more CC, more evasiveness while mapping. And then finally, I plan to run Ghost Dance linked with Herbalism. The other thing you can run that's not Herbalism is called like, I forgot. There's something that gives you 4% life gain on kill. It's also really nice, but I think Flash Recovery is very solid on this thing. The Tree. Ascendancy-wise, this node is actually not that great, but it's like QOL, because the poison doesn't matter from Vine Arrow, which is what this scales. Bit of a bummer. Implanted Gems, my #1 reason for wanting to play Gemling. It's just, you know, so powerful. Plus 50% more damage, like all day. And then Adaptive is really great for the reasons that aforementioned. And finally, because your skill gems are all so high level, they cost like 400 to 500 mana to use. Advanced Thaumaturgy is really fantastic. So Gemling is just like really well-rounded. People ask me, can I play this on Ranger? Can I play this on Pathfinder? And to be honest, Deadeye and Pathfinder aren't my favorite, but you probably could. You could probably play this on a bunch of things. I've considered playing this on Invoker, so you can have like PDR, stack more evasion, play Meditate, that sort of thing. I could play this on Chayula, you know, go for a dual pickup leech so that you can like run around and kind of recover from that. But it's really hard to beat Gemling, I think, just from a both QOL and just raw damage perspective. Fantastic. I'm mostly hitting Dex as the main stat. I don't think I have any Inter Strength on my entire tree, so that's pretty cool. And then most of the nodes are towards evasion. I think this is a really cool tree. It looks a little bit ugly, and I'm sure that it could likely be optimized further. But there's some things to note. Firstly, I like CDR wheels. This wheel here. This wheel here for cooldown reduction and skill effect duration, which also makes it nicer to boss with. And then a little bit more cooldown reduction over here. 2 purposes. Firstly, blink cooldown. Secondly, when I boss, I link Hourglass. And this CDR actually makes my Hourglass to Vine Arrow come off cooldown more quickly. And then there's a bit more here. AoE is really nice, it helps out your clear, and the rest of it's like attack speed, some dexterity, travel. But the most important thing is I'm pathing to jewel sockets. As many jewels as you can run, as long as they're breaking a threshold. So even if you're not hitting a threshold, an increased effective quiver is going to be powerful, because I already have proj damage and proj speed on the quiver, right? So they're also really, really good. But you want to be hitting thresholds that push gem levels up. So I'm like looking for everything. In the later game, I'll also be grabbing this jewel over here, but I'm just not there yet with my current build. And that's pretty much the whole build. Really, really simple concept. Basically just poach straight off of somewhere. I don't actually know where. I just know that a lot of people have already been playing this in like, especially in the Korean meta. And it just shows like how far behind some of us can actually be, you know? I think there's like a lot of stuff that's already been discovered, uncovered, experimented with, like Infernalist with its like, you know, thousands of stacks of demon form that has been assumed, you know, it's been nerfed pretty recently. But it's so cool, so linear, and I'm hoping this one can at least escape the absolute gutting. I would expect it to get nerfed, But because the mechanics are fairly straightforward, and I think it is really, really high investment, incredibly high investment to try to achieve the big numbers, we might still be able to play this, come next week. Maybe. I hope. Man, I'd love to play this to 100.